Hi everyone, it's Dr. Fox, and let's talk about the lungs. In this video, we'll describe the surfaces of the lungs. We'll also describe the gross features of each lung, noting the lobes, fissures, apices, hila and roots, bases, cardiac notch, as well as lingula. So let's begin with the surfaces of the lungs. Here we can see the right and left lung. So this side would be the right, and that side would be the left, and specifically the surfaces of each. So this is the costal surface of the right lung and the costal surface of the left lung. You may note that there are these fissures separating each. There's one, and there is the other. More on that later. These costal surfaces are what face the costal pleura, or the lining of the pulmonary cavity that is just deep to the ribs and the intercostal spaces. So costal surfaces face the rib cage. There's also a mediastinal surface, and here we can see the mediastinal surface of the right lung and the mediastinal surface of the left lung. The mediastinal surface faces the mediastinal pleura. That is the lining of the pulmonary cavity that faces the mediastinum of the thoracic cavity. The most significant features of these mediastinal surfaces are the hila. See that there and that there. The hilum of each lung is the region where the neurovasculature as well as the conductive pathways enter and exit the lungs. The hilum hosts something called the root of the lung. The root of the lung is the specific contents of the hilum. So, for instance, a primary bronchus, pulmonary arteries, pulmonary veins, lymphatics, things like that are the roots of the lungs. There's also a portion of the lungs, and that is just below these arcs that I'm drawing, which are the diaphragmatic surfaces of the lungs. Another way of saying diaphragmatic surface of the lung is the base of the lung. And this is the portion of the lung that faces the diaphragmatic pleura, which is lining the diaphragm. Opposite to the base are the apices, so the very tops of the lungs. So let's take a look at the different lobes of the lung. So here we have the right lung, and here we have the left lung. And let's start with the right lung. So the right lung has three different lobes. There's a superior lobe, a middle lobe, and an inferior lobe. We can see them from the mediastinal surface as well. There's the superior, there's the middle, and there's the inferior. The superior lobe is associated with the apex of the right lung. The inferior as well as the middle lobes are associated with the base, and all three of these lobes are typically visible from both the costal surface as well as the mediastinal surface. Separating these lobes are fissures. So separating the inferior lobe from everything else is the oblique fissure. So it runs obliquely. So we can see there's the oblique fissure there, and we can imagine it going through there. Separating the superior lobe from the middle lobe is the horizontal fissure. You can see that there and there. So that is the horizontal fissure. So the visceral pleura of the right lung invaginates and dives deep to cover all of the surfaces of those lobes at the fissures. Now the left lung is a little more parsimonious with respect to lobes. On the left lung, there's typically a superior and an inferior lobe. Superior and inferior. We still have apices associated with the superior lobe. The base is the inferior lobe. Separating these two is an oblique fissure. Sometimes we may find a left lung with a middle lobe, but that is an exception. That is not what we typically see. There are more specific features of the left lung to discuss. So again, donor left, not our left. Of the superior lobe, so that's basically everything that we can see from this anterior view. There is kind of a notch out of the superior lobe, and we call this the cardiac notch. And the heart is visible in this cardiac notch. Also, of the superior lobe, kind of, if we follow the cardiac notch down, we have a little bit of a tongue-shaped protuberance. That's called the lingula. So the cardiac notch and lingula are of the superior lobe. The lingula is not of the inferior lobe. Now let's turn our attention to the mediastinal surfaces of the lungs, so we can forget about that side for now. And we can see the hila of these lungs. Those are the regions where the neurovasculature and the conductive pathways enter and exit. Each hilum hosts a root of the lung. So the root of the lung consists of the contents of the hilum. So for instance, there's the primary bronchus. There's the primary bronchus. Here are the pulmonary arteries. Those pulmonary arteries will have a very close relationship with the primary bronchus. Over here, that's pulmonary artery. And then what remains are the pulmonary veins. Pulmonary vein there and there. Keeping in mind that the pulmonary veins are the most richly oxygenated blood here. The pulmonary arteries are relatively deoxygenated blood. Also present there, but not illustrated, are the lymphatics. And so at this place, we should expect to see hilar nodes, if present. So let's assess the knowledge. The horizontal fissure separates the middle lobe of the right lung from which other lobe? That would be A, the superior lobe. That separates the middle, so that's the horizontal fissure. The middle lobe would be separated from the inferior lobe by the oblique fissure. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll talk to you in the next video.